Yes, we're a little bit late on this one. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Canon R1 today. I actually managed to have a little bit of a hands-on experience at Canon HQ, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the specs of the actual camera, and so talking about where it lands in the market. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get to shoot with the camera, but I managed to get some cool B-roll, so I'm going to have that in and amongst all of this, kind of like talking about it. Anyway, let's get into some of the specs, shall we? Here it is, the big boy. This is the R1. You've got your varying angle screen there, which is pretty cool. Something to really notice when you first look at the camera is that, of course, you've got this sort of like metal sheet, rubber, kind of like pattern design for the actual grip, which feels nice. It's nice to see like a distinctive kind of like change in that kind of design as well. Of course, you've got the new hot shoe on the top, and I didn't mention that actually either. You've got a full-size HDMI, which is going to be great for videographers. This doesn't have the same specs as the R5 Mark II, of course, because you've got that 24 megapixel sensor. You've got your Ethernet point there as well. This actually feels like the right size camera for my hands. Sounds really weird, but I think it's good. Of course, when it comes to the R1, it is more sports focused, so what you've got there is a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, which is basically all you really need for that. However, this does limit the video capabilities to just 6K, but it is 6K 60. This does actually benefit from having the dual processor unit that the R5 Mark II has, which means that it's a lot faster at processing imaging and also autofocus data there as well. Sports focused autofocus capability in the R5, which is a really cool new feature. It does only shoot 40 frames per second, and I was honestly expecting them to say 120 in JPEG like a lot of the other manufacturers have been doing recently. However, when you really think about it, 40 frames per second is pretty much all you need. Because they've got that dual processor unit, your rolling shutter has actually been reduced by a hell of a lot, which means it has as close to global shutter performance as you can really get. And that's really what you need out of a camera. It's not a mechanical shutter, it is electronic, so it's going to be interesting to see as we come up to the Olympics how well this actually performs with a lot of shooters. I was told by media from Canon that a lot of the shooters at the Olympics have actually had a very good experience with it. So, I mean, there is that in it as well. And again, because you have that speed inside, it does actually have the benefit of shooting 240 frames per second at 2K, which means you've actually got pretty awesome slow motion footage coming out of the camera, which actually is better than anything else on the market at the moment when it comes to these full frame cameras. And a lot of the other camera manufacturers are probably going to be playing a little bit of catch up. It's going to be quite interesting to see how the industry reacts to this, because of course you do have a whole heap of other manufacturers producing really awesome cameras at the moment, and there are some people that haven't actually released a full frame mirrorless camera in a little while. So pretty much industry leading cameras at this time is a really strong move from Canon, and it's going to be interesting again seeing how people use the cameras and get on with them in the future. It actually has 4-channel audio, and that combined with the new hot shoe that both of these cameras have, you're actually going to be seeing a lot more accessories in the future concerning audio, which is what I am excited to see in the market. If you've watched these videos quite a bit from us, you know that I feel like hot shoe audio delivery is pretty much the way forward, because it makes your setup much more compact and less cables the better. Super happy about this and excited to see what they do with it in the future. And you know, this is both on the R5 and the R1. Really cool. Again, nice to see some new specs from Canon. So talking about features, what do you think is the defining feature of the camera?
Ooh, it's quite hard to pick one. I think one of the big ones is this accelerated capture, which actually it's in both of the new models, both the R1 and the R5 Mark II. So as well as the Digic processor, X processor that everyone is familiar with in the camera, we've added another processor, so the Digic accelerator. So you're combining two processing engines to deal with that massive volume or large volume of data, not for just for the imaging, but also for the AF. So this has made a massive difference in terms of improving the autofocus on the camera, the tracking, making the camera faster as well, and then improving the camera's performance when it comes to the rolling shutter distortion, the video capabilities, and so much more. I mean, there are so many features, as I said, on the top of the accelerated capture. I can mention the cross-type AF as well. That is, the R1 is the first and the only camera to feature that, meaning the AF is sensitive to both horizontal and vertical direction, so it's more accurate, especially when you're dealing with subjects that lack contrast or with just the horizontal contrast. So this will give it the edge over the R3, for example, and other cameras, including, I mean, 1DX or any other cameras that we have in the range. The pre-continuous shooting, where the camera can capture 20 images before you even fully press the shutter. So it's ready for you to ensure that you never miss the shot.
And that's one of the most important parts when it comes to this kind of camera, is making sure that you never miss that shot. And reliability, I think, is something to be said there as well. I mean, I've seen the granddaddy, the 1DX, be like basically caked in mud and everything like that. And you can definitely see that they're going to go along with that when it comes to this as well.
It is. I mean, I've seen, because of the number of kind of professional services events I've supported, I've seen, I'm not saying people go out there and drop their cameras, but I've seen the 1 series, 1DS, even dropped, and the camera that survived, as I said, is the build quality, but also the internal features of the camera that makes it basically a camera that photographers and videographers trust.
So what between these two cameras, what do you think is the kind of like, what differences are there?
I mean, there are so many. Obviously, you're going from a dish SLR body into a mirrorless body, and as I said, with the R1, you see more of the benefits of the RF mount. So we have 8.5 stops when it comes to IBIS, so the in-body IS, the new sensor in the camera, as I said, reducing the rolling shutter distortion, but also the low light performance, using deep learning. So deep learning, not just when it comes to image quality, but also when it comes to the autofocus. So I think if you start comparing the two, we'll probably be here for hours.
It's a generation ahead, right?
There are so many technologies that we've incorporated in the R1. At the time of the 1DX Mark III, they didn't exist. Plus, as I said, the RF mount has actually enabled us to do a lot more and to add more features to the camera compared to what we were able to add to the 1DX Mark III in 2020. I mean, this camera is about 4.5 years old, so
definitely
it has been around.
So the video specs of this are interesting. When it came to the 1DX and the 5D Mark IV, they kind of had very similar specs to each other when it came to video, but of course, because you haven't got as high a resolution sensor in this as you do in the new EOS R5, what do you think of the video specs? Do you think that's enough of what people want, or do you reckon?
Definitely. I mean, with the R1, you can record up to 6K 60, and that's in RAW, which, I mean, most people, to give themselves flexibility, yes, they might want to record over 4K or higher resolution than 4K. Still think 6K, it's more than high enough, especially the option that you can do RAW in camera, because I think that's a big plus. You can still do 4K up to 120 frames per second. The great thing with even the 4K, this has the oversampled 4K, which means it's using the 6K sensor to produce that 4K, so you do get better quality than your standard 4K sensor. The dynamic range on the camera, so you can potentially using C-Log 2 achieve up to like 16 plus stops of dynamic range. So this is a big one for the EOS R cameras. So many other video features, like Full HD in 2K, you can do 240 frames per second.
Which is actually in any of the other, like none of the other competitors actually have 240 frames per second in 2K, which is good.
You've got the tally lamp as well, so it tells the person that the camera is recording. The other advantage with video on both models is we've added so many options in terms of the different compressions, bitrate. So obviously choosing different bitrate will affect the size of the file, how long you'll be recording. So plenty of options for people depending on their deliverables.
With the autofocus, you've not only just got the sports mode, but you've actually got registered people, so you can actually register people's faces in the camera, which is great. You can do this before the match without necessarily actually taking photos of them. Just upload it to the SD card and register it as the faces you want to focus on, which makes making sure you grab the right people a lot easier. The thing that I want to talk about a little bit here as well is, of course, the viewfinder. You've got a very bright viewfinder, and it's nice and big actually on the camera itself. This is for a couple different reasons. One, it's higher quality, but the other side of it is that it's to track your eye for the autofocus, which again is a really cool feature, and it's actually a little bit of an old feature as well, coming from the EOS 3, back from the film days of Canon. That's pretty cool. I know the R3 had it as well, but you know, it's cool that they're introducing it into these cameras, really, isn't it? My general thoughts on the R1 is that it's an incredible camera. It's very much the standard for flagships at the moment to be very powerful, and they've actually really matched the specs that people really use in a real world environment. The video is excellent, the camera feels really good in the hand, and you know, you've got everything you really need for a flagship camera at the moment. This is of course going to be used predominantly by sports and wildlife photographers, but the other side of it is I can see it being adopted by a lot of people because it's very powerful, and yes, the price point is 7,000, but you know, it really does have all the specs to really justify it. I think we're going to be having the cameras in our hand at some point in the future. It's going to be interesting to both compare them and see kind of what you can really get out of them when it comes to performance. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, follow and subscribe if you want to see more. Have a good day.